And welcome back to another CS Lightwork video. I know it has been a long time, but I'm finally back and I'm here to stay. Now, the video I'm going to be bringing you guys today is about TOON, token-oriented object notation, a new way to put the data in. Now, a lot of you guys are probably wondering what it might be, and a lot of you guys might have seen it. I've seen so many articles come out about this. All my LinkedIn feed has been booming about TOON, 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 the JSON killer. But what is it? In this video, we're going to be going over what is it, why it matters to us, what's important, when to use it, how to set it up, but also why this is a great solution to a lot of problems you might run into with your AI uses, especially as that's growing, whether it's you're using it straight for request right away or you're setting it up in your code to send requests to the APIs, how to save tokens, what tokens are, all of that, we're going to get into it. But what is TOON? Now, essentially, if you guys aren't familiar with JSON data, I'm assuming most of you are, but we're going to go over it real quick. But essentially, it's just data formatted as such, and as you see an example on the right here, where you can have an array of a certain type of objects. In this case it's employees, and you will have the individual declarations of each instance, so each employee, and every time in there, uh, you will declare what property and what value it has. So what does that mean? Essentially, you see for this employee, its ID is 1, name is Alice, role is admin, and so forth. And it's for every entry, it's repeated. Now, a problem that you might see, you might not see, is that we have that property repeated every time. Now, is that a problem? Why am I saying it's a problem? Let's get into that. This is where TOON comes in. So TOON, contrarily, what it does is instead of having those keys, the name of the property repeat every single time, what we do here is we declare what the properties are going to be for the data that's coming. So here we say, hey, ID, name, role, department, salary, and then we just put the data in rows using tabs to sort of separate the new entries. Why is this crucial? Why is this important? Why are people so hyped over this? Well, uh, as you'd imagine, and sort of the key difference you're seeing is we don't have those repeated use of keys, right? We don't have to repeatedly say, hey, this is the ID, this is the ID, this is the ID, this is the name, this is the name, this is the name. Why does that matter? Now, to understand why this matters, it's important to sort of mentally understand how AI LLMs will take in text that you feed it. Okay, it's when you're prompting it, or even when you're submitting a request, and how it's going to take in that data and use it. Right? You don't need to know the nitty gritty about this, which is the good part. All you need to understand is how it works. Is it will break up your data or your whatever you're feeding it into something called tokens. Now, even without thinking about tokens, you can see that this is clearly much less characters, right? Like the length of what you're feeding it is much less. So here I have a sort of visualizer of how token works. All it is on a brief surface level is how AI is going to sort of break it up into pieces based on some common patterns and assign it a value based on that. So in here, the tokens for this example we used is 149. This is how it's breaking it up. Again, not that important. Now, when we use TOON format for this exact same data, let's just copy paste, see what it is. We are at 79 tokens. That's almost a 50% cut, okay? Why does that matter? What are you talking about? Tokens, this, that. Why does this matter? Okay, we use less tokens. It comes down to we are now able to use less tokens to feed it the same data, right? And guess what? How does it work? Or sort of why does this concern us? Because when we're making anything as simple as like a ChatGPT request on the browser to having backend code set up to make an API call to any LLM or anything like that, our limitations lie with the tokens, right? Think about all these subscriptions you might have. You might have a pay per token once you go over your limit. There might be just a general overall token limit, and what that token limit you always see is essentially how much you can submit it, right? So when we have this solution where we have the exact same data, right? We have the exact same data, but we can use less tokens. We can now essentially, in this case, say it's around 50%, we could submit double the data, double the context, or cost-wise, we can save half of our money, right? Now, this half is just a generic number I'm throwing out for this example, but whatever amount of the tokens we can save, right? We could either save it in money or give it even more context. And that's essentially why this is so crucial and why this is sort of a solution in that regard. Now, from a personal perspective, again, if you have your own subscription, you can use less tokens feeding the same data you've been feeding. Or again, if you're paying per token, you can be paying less. Or even if you're facing limitation issues on your API request, this might solve that issue. And now you might be asking, hey, does this cost us accuracy? Well, I will definitely leave a link below for the one who developed the TOON format and the code for that. But looking at the actual accuracy and the retrieval accuracy, its benchmarks are doing just as well, if not better, than JSON when this is used in the correct context, right? So again, we'll get into how or when it's best and not best to use this, but sort of I want to show you an example of how to set this up for yourself, so you guys can try it and see what's up. So essentially, it's actually made very simple. So long as you have TypeScript and npm set up, all you have to do is run your npm install toon format toon, and I'm also going to leave the repo link, of course, in the description and everywhere I can related to this video. And you just want to set that up. And once you run this on your directory, npm install toon format toon, all you have to do is import encode, and run it. That's it. It's a one-liner. It's expecting JSON object, and it's going to output, as you see, I have it logged here, the toon formatted data, right? So it's really, really, really simple to use, and definitely worth trying out yourself for sure. Now, here's the thing. Is this really the JSON killer? No, but it can definitely be the better choice sometimes, right? So when we're dealing with uniform array data, things like these employee records, or maybe information on businesses, information on anything that sort of matches this sequential, consistently formatted data, which we see a lot, right? Especially when we're dealing with personal things or smaller items using AIs, feeding our LLMs for personal use. You definitely can see the use case for that. However, when do we not use this, right? So a concern that came up for me right away is maybe you have a lot of optional fields and possible blank fields or similar value fields, where if you're working with a lot of data, right? And you might have department and then something else that's similar to a department, where the AI might be confusing engineering with maybe process materials, just random things like that, where you're dealing with heavy data with maybe optional fields, very similar fields, deeply nested config, non-tabular data. That's when we'd sort of stick to the JSON. But as you can see, this sort of use case I thought was really, really interesting, just because it's a classic problem. The AI usage is going up and up for devs, for non-devs, for everybody, and the typical sort of bottleneck with that is your token usage, right? You want to make that cost efficient. If you're on a business level, maybe you do have the money to do it, but you want to make it more efficient. Or personal level, right? You have a lot of information you want to feed for context when you're coding, or when you're even just using any LLM, and you run into these token limitation issues, or maybe you want to feed it a bit more within your limit. TOON is definitely a beautiful approach to take. But I had been seeing this all around YouTube, all around LinkedIn, sort of posted everywhere. So I thought it would be good to make sort of a more explained video on how this works, what this is for, and sort of a simple little demonstration here, explaining how useful it is. And yeah, if you guys want to try this out yourself, please feel free to. Let me know what you think. Let me know any use cases you might have for this, maybe any issues you might have with this as well, because again, this is sort of like a surface level overview, but I could see with more complex data, you could run into trouble. But at the same time, I think this is a really, really neat way to sort of optimize your token usage, or sort of double or whatever the number comes out to be, your input size for data, and feeding it more context, which is cool. The only other thing I wanted to make note of is sort of, what does the relationship look like, right? Like when we have a JSON object and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, what does that mean for the TOON object? Is it logarithmic, right? Is it slowly not increasing the efficiency that much? Does it become exponential, where it's even better and better and better? Well, even for an example like this, it's data dependent, right? Because you could have something like the values we have here, where we're seeing around the values we have here, or you could have something like longer names for fields, right, for keys, and then just single number, double numbers, 2 digit, 3 digits, right, for the values. So what does that mean? Essentially, if you had something like an array here, and you had a bunch of fields, right, and the values were just 1, and then you have something like super ID, and then 2, where we have a lot of characters in the key but not in the value, this is where we would be saving most, right? Because the whole point is that we're mainly saving on repeating those field names, right? So this is where it could become exponential as you grow in the size of your data. However, if you have the inverse, right? Maybe you have like something like a message where it's like 100 characters long and then another message 100 characters long. That's when it would become a bit more towards the logarithmic side, because the value in TOON is saving that those keys, right? That's the biggest thing from TOON, I would say, is saving the repetition of your fields, right? So in a case where your fields aren't, where your values are sort of the larger majority of the space being taken up, tokens being taken up, you won't save as much. So again, this is just one of those situations where you need to, of course, assess your requirements, assess what you're up to on a personal level, to a business level, what solution you're implementing. But I thought it was a really cool sort of object notation to use, and sort of how simply it was implemented as well. Please feel free to try out the library and also go through it. There's many a bit more, a couple more uses, and some sort of guidance on how, when not to use it, when it might be best to use it, and everything like that. But I thought it was really cool, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please let me know your thoughts. Hit a like, hit a subscribe, and without further ado, I'm out.